Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the Flying Fluffy Football live stream of the basically only a couple more days to go until football is here. So, so I believe not until after it was not until after I had concluded the live stream on Thursday that I that the news broke of the Micah Parsons trade. I think I accidentally disconnected the Ethernets. Give me a second. Okay. All right. Cap for Life says Reset Incorporated is open for business. Let's do lunch. Oh yeah, that's right. The I know exactly what I can start off the stream with talking about the the fantasy the the fantasy football league. I know some of you watching the stream are. Oh yeah, that's right. Only there was a 12 team fantasy league that Jaws ended up creating that has several of the fans of the channel include, and it includes me and my dad. Pacharo, I did see that the Hurricanes had beat Notre Dame. It's a good start to the season for the Hurricanes. Apparently, everyone enjoys pointing and laughing at the Fighting Irish. I also know just enough about college football to know that it's absolutely hilarious that FSU beat Alabama. So, give me a second. I hope you guys don't mind. I figured that I could share the results of the draft. This is the fantasy football team that I drafted in the Flying Fluffy Football League. My first round pick was Amon Ross St. Brown. I ended up near the bottom of the snake, the snake draft. I think I had like the 11th 11th out of 12 picks. So I picked near the bottom of every odds numbered round and near the top of every even numbered round. So I ended up my fantasy team. This is a PPR. This is a PPR league, 4 points for passing touchdowns league. So I got Jalen Hurts as my quarterback. Devon Achane and DeAndre Swift are my 2 running backs. Amon-Ra St. Brown and Terry McLaurin are my wide receivers. Colston Loveland is my tight end. The flex spot, I picked up Devonta Smith. Then I chose Seahawks defense and Brandon Aubrey as my kicker. And then for my bench, I got Roma Dunze, the Chicago wide receiver. Caleb Williams is my backup quarterback. Keenan Allen, wide receiver. Tank Bigsby, the Jacksonville running back. Cedric Tillman, the Cleveland wide receiver. Ray Davis, just in case James Cook misses any time. And Zach Ertz is my backup tight end. Mr. Krabs says Xavier Howard is on the Colts and will start versus us. That is, yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see which defense does better, the Dolphins defense or the ex-Dolphins defense. Who do I think has the best team in the fantasy league? Well, I would have to go through all of them. Let me see. Who do I think has the best? There's a Okay, just going by starters, I'd say among the top teams here, Reset Incorporated, that's Cap for life. He drafted Patrick Mahomes, Josh Jacobs, Bucky Irving, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Cooper Kupp, Travis Kelce, Nick Chubb, the Texans defense special teams, and Chase McLaughlin. The only other team I see that has that much talent. Jake the Minnesota fan has Josh Allen as his quarterback, Jonathan Taylor as his running back, Kenneth Walker, Jamar Chase, Xavier Worthy, David Njoku, and Jameson Williams, along with the Vikings defense and Jake Bates. That is a team I'm afraid of. Yes, someone's name is really Tua turn the ball over. Yeah, we've got Jaws, Storm Duck Season, Cocoa Beach Raw Dogs, Tua turn the ball over, Jake the Minnesota fan, Rosato's astounding team, the Lord's Advent, Droid, Icy Dad Boy 96. That's my team. Jaws Jr.'s Jackrabbits. Then there's RBJ, Reset Incorporated, and that is it. So my dad plans on basically posting a weekly recap of how the fantasy week went to the channel. So you'll get more of that. So you'll get more of that as the football season progresses. But in terms of actual football news, Gabe Davis is returning to the Bills practice squad. And ESPN posted an article titled Inside the Cowboys' decision to trade Micah Parsons. What is it with the Colts taking our players? I wouldn't know, actually. So yeah, there's an article here. An article here titled Inside the Cowboys' Decision to Trade Micah Parsons. Let's see. Apparently back in March there was a meeting between Jerry Jones and Parsons that started off as a leadership meeting, but then it went towards contract talks. And apparently later that same day, Parsons called Jerry Jones's son, Stephen Jones, in an attempt to get more money out of the deal. Pacharo says, Kyle, the Miami Hurricanes are fifth in our rankings. Are fifth in the rankings. Hey, that's pretty good. The rankings went up, right? After beating Notre Dame. So yeah, we are on Tuesday. We are on Tuesday, and only a couple more days only a couple of more days until actual football to talk about. Because let's face it, with now free agency basically over, aside from the Micah Parsons more pointing and laughing at Jerry Jones for completely mishandling the Micah Parsons situation, there isn't really anything left to talk about. So I guess what I should do now is take a look at Miami Dolphins schedule and try and make some predictions. Give me a second. All right. Coleman says, funnily enough, George Pickens has the same agent as Micah Parsons. Yeah, David Mulugeta. How hard is it to simply negotiate with an agent? And one of the biggest talking points about this whole Micah Parsons saga was if David Mulugeta was doing the best thing for his player by essentially being part of a situation where if the Cowboys had really wanted to, they could have just made Micah play on his fifth-year option. Therefore, it would have ended up costing Micah a lot of money, potentially. But it would appear that Mulugeta was not the irrational agent that Jerry Jones made him out to be. Because Micah Parsons is now making $47 million a year. Excuse me. So I wanted to talk about the Miami Dolphins schedule and essentially come up with a more solid, full prediction for how I think the Dolphins season is going to go. So here we are. This is the Miami Dolphins schedule, and I will try to basically, excuse me. Here we are. This is the Miami Dolphins schedule, and I will be trying to predict how every game goes. So week 1 at Indianapolis, that should be a win. I will not hear any excuses other than the entire team getting destroyed by injuries before a snap is even played. Week 1 should be a win. Week 2 against New England, I would also say should be a win. I don't think the Patriots are the dark horse that some the NFL fans think they are. They're still very much in the middle of a rebuild. So I'd say the Dolphins win against the Colts and the Patriots and then proceed to lose to the Bills on Thursday Night Football. I just don't see the Dolphins winning that matchup just yet. Week 4 against the Jets, definitely I think the Dolphins should win that one. That means the Dolphins, after the first 4 weeks, would be 3-1. At Carolina, I would say the Dolphins are favored in that matchup, but at the same time, that's a trap game. Some of these games I'll be mentioning essentially are coin flips where they could go either way. And then there are games that I feel are trap games in which one opponent has a chance of highly upsetting the other. So at Carolina should be a win, but I fear it might be a trap game. Week 6 against the LA Chargers. That is what I consider a coin flip game where essentially both teams just have just as good a chance to win. Do you remember the first week of the 2023 NFL season when we played against them? How back and forth that game went between the healthy Dolphins and the healthy Chargers. The Dolphins did win that one, so again, the LA game, the Chargers game is the definition of coin flip to me. At Cleveland, win. They're going to be starting Joe Flacco. And unless Joe Flacco has returned to that elite form he had during the Linsanity run a couple years ago, it should be a W. At the Falcons, it's hard to gauge this one because we really don't know what Michael Penix Jr. is going to do at this level. We only got a small sample size last year of Michael Penix, and we'll have to wait and see if the Falcons are going to do their routine choking and collapsing at every opportunity or not. I'd say Dolphins should win that game, but it also has the propensity to be a trap game. Week 9, Thursday night, again, against the Baltimore Ravens. That's a loss. We're not beating Lamar and Derrick Henry. The Bills, probably another loss. I mean, the Bills have routinely owned the Dolphins in this stretch. I wouldn't really expect much to change here unless something catastrophic happens in Buffalo. Then there is the game in Madrid against the Commanders, and that caps off probably the most brutal stretch of the entire season. Now, I would peg this down as a Dolphins loss, but this is a trap game in the opposite direction because the international games mess with the sleep schedules and the routines of both teams. So while the Commanders, I think, are the superior team in that matchup, I would not be surprised if the Dolphins actually stole a win here, but I'm going to write it down as a loss just to be safe. Then there's the bye. The Saints, that's the easiest win we should have. The easiest win we should have in the entire schedule. I think it would be even easier to beat them than the Colts. Week 14 at the Jets. And now we are in December. And this is where the cold starts to factor into games. I would say the Dolphins win this easily if the temperature is above 40 degrees, but heaven help us if it's a unseasonably cold time in New York. Like win but trap game. Then you have the Monday night's game at Pittsburgh. Again, that's liable to be a cold weather game. And I'd say the Dolphins and Steelers are about the same level of team. So this is a coin flip game if I've ever seen one against the Steelers. It's going to be the Minka revenge game, the Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith revenge game. It's going to be a fun watch. I have no idea who's going to win that one. Week 16 against Cincinnati. This is a Sunday night game at home. And I'm also going to be bold here and say this is a coin flip game. You essentially, in theory, have a matchup against two of the top offenses in the NFL with next to no defense to speak of. The Dolphins could actually pull off a win here, or Joe Burrow could actually be rewarded for throwing for 500 yards and 4 touchdowns. So that's another coin flip. Week 17 at home against the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers have never been truly elite in this current time frame, but they are still highly dangerous. You're talking the in-state rivalry, and, Baker Mayfield maybe at this point needing the win to lead his team into the playoffs, depending on how the NFC South shakes up. So, again, I would say that this is another coin flip game. I could give the edge to Tampa Bay here, but depending on what states they're in at this point, the Dolphins might still have a reasonable chance to win this game. So, worst case scenario would be the close loss to the Buccaneers. And then week 18 at New England. On paper, we should beat the Patriots, but this is going to be at New England sometime in early January and bound to be exceedingly cold. So you can't really rely on the Dolphins to win in temperatures below 40 degrees until they actually do it. And this could be a game with playoffs on the line, and the Dolphins aren't really known for being clutch in those situations, which is something they're trying to change. So, yeah. You have to figure that week 18 could be a trap game. So, my plan here is to do a floor and a ceiling for the Dolphins. The floor being the absolute worst that I think they're going to be, and the ceiling being where I think they could be at the top. So I think the floor for the Dolphins is pretty low because there are so many games where if the Dolphins have lost the clutch gene or can't rediscover whatever clutch gene they had in the past, if they ever had one, there could be a lot of brutal losses. So you're talking losing both games to the Bills, perhaps losing at least one, if not two, of the games against the Patriots and Jets. So I would say the Dolphins' worst case scenario could be only winning 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I think the floor for the Dolphins could easily be 6-11. That's what I think the Dolphins' floor is set at. It would mean only winning a couple of the games against teams like the Panthers and Falcons, losing to the Buccaneers, Steelers, Ravens, Bengals, Commanders, etc. So 6-11, I think, is the floor. I don't think the Dolphins are so terrible that they would have less than 6 wins unless injuries or a complete loss of team morale were to occur. As for ceiling, my most optimistic Dolphins prediction: win against the Colts, win against the Patriots. I guess it'd be easier to count the losses even in my most optimistic prediction. Lose to the Bills, lose to the Ravens and Bills and Commanders. That's 4. Then 5 and 6. I would say 11 and 6 is the Dolphins' ceiling. I don't see how they're beating the Bills even once, or the Ravens. They might lose to the Commanders. They probably will lose to at least one of the Steelers and Bengals. They could lose to the Buccaneers. Or if they don't lose to the Buccaneers, they might lose to the Chargers or even the Panthers. So 11 and 6 would be my ceiling, and 6-11 would be my floor. And there you have it. My prediction seems pretty well aligned with what everyone is thinking about the Dolphins, that either everything goes right and the Dolphins make it into the playoffs with a chance at sweet redemption for years of playoff failure, or everything goes wrong and everything has to be blown up in Dolphins land. So we'll have to wait and find out what happens. In the meantime, we can only cross our fingers and hope that everyone stays healthy and actually can win in temperatures below 40 degrees or against teams above 500. So Colin says, honestly, the first 2 games are trap games. Well, I mean, if the Dolphins can't get their acts together against the Colts and Patriots, it does not bode well for the rest of the season. Pacharo says, Kyle, at least the home game with the Bills is going to be 1 o'clock instead of a primetime game. Pacharo says, we usually beat the Bills in hot weather in Miami. Yeah. Well, I'd say the most brutal games on this schedule. The most brutal games on this schedule are going to be having to play at Buffalo on Thursday night in week 3. And don't get me started on this lovely trifecta where after the week 8 matchup at Atlanta, the Dolphins have to prepare for another Thursday night game against the Ravens at home. Then the following Sunday, or should I say essentially after the extended break. Then we have to play the Bills at home at 1 o'clock. And then we have the Washington Commanders in Spain. And what's funny about that game is I drafted Terry McLaurin in fantasy, so I'll be rooting for my team to win, but I wouldn't mind if Scary Terry terrorizes the whatever the Dolphins have duct taped together at corner. Pun intended. So the Dolphins are playing. I was searching through this schedule. The Dolphins appear to be playing one team from the AFC South. We play our divisional opponents. We are playing the entire NFC South, which is pretty good because Panthers, Falcons, and especially Saints are some of the best chances at a win on this schedule. Then we are playing the lone AFC West team in the Chargers. We're playing all of the AFC North teams, which is pretty brutal because that means you have to go up against the Steelers, Bengals, and Ravens. And then you have the matchup against our lone NFC East opponents, the Commanders. And yeah. Jacques Bethune says, Josh Allen marries the girl from Bumblebee. Well, I hope the marriage is very, very happy for both of them. I heard that the Bills are getting a Hallmark Christmas movie this winter. But I'd like to hear your thoughts about the Dolphins predictions I just made. Do you think I've made any bold predictions? Do you think I'm playing it too safe, perhaps? I look at how the Dolphins were last year after Tua came back from injury, and I see how agonizingly close the Dolphins came to beating the Bills and the Cardinals in part of that free fall stretch. All the defense had to do was not collapse completely in those two games, and we win them. And I'm thinking the Dolphins made all these moves to try and address the culture. You know, they traded Jalen Ramsey. They have essentially a completely revamped defense. At what point do the Dolphins break out? This has to be the last chance that Greer and McDaniel are going to get here, right? Because right now, McDaniel is not proven that he can coach a team that wins in the playoffs or wins in the cold. And Greer has not proven that he can build a roster that actually is healthy enough, or should I say deep enough. Offensive line had been the issue for many years and still don't have much in the way of offensive line depth. And now we have our starting corners are Storm, Duck, and either Jack Jones or Rasul Douglas. Colin says, I mean, the defense is going to be the make or break for the season to be a success. And that's why it's so crucial that the Dolphins don't stumble out of the opening gate. If the Dolphins can't manage to stop Daniel Jones, or should I say Indiana Jones in week 1, if they can't stop that offense from running all over us, then what possible hope do the Dolphins have to stop the likes of Josh Allen or Justin Herbert or Lamar Jackson? Will get destroyed by Jaden Daniels in Madrid if the defense can't even stop Daniel Jones or Drake May or Justin Fields. The hope is that the Dolphins did enough, invested enough in that defensive line, and that all the linebackers we have can stay healthy, because the Dolphins need to succeed in generating pressure and stifling the run. Cap for Life says, if the Dolphins don't stop Daniel Jones week 1, the 4-man grill is coming for Greer and McDaniel. Yeah, I'd say this week 1 game, more than any week 1 game in the past couple of years, is a perfect litmus test to find out just how high the Dolphins fans' expectations should be set. Because the Colts are one of the most hilariously mid teams in the AFC. And this is in a conference where it's essentially become Chiefs, Bills, Ravens, and then everybody else in one gigantic mid-tier pile. And then you have a couple of teams near the bottom, like the Titans, or on paper, the Patriots. But the AFC is so mid-tier, aside from the Chiefs, Bills, and Ravens, and of those 3, only the Chiefs actually perform when it matters the most. Cap for Life says, it's true, in the AFC there's way too much parity. Well, that's also a blessing, Cap for Life, because it means that if the Dolphins gets the lucky breaks, if the Dolphins do steal a couple of wins here and there, the Dolphins easily could get themselves in a wild card spot. Like, you have the division winners are almost entirely set in stone. Do you really trust any other team in the AFC West to dethrone the Chiefs? The Chiefs coming off their most humiliating defeat in a while? Like, I know it's popular to pick a different AFC West division winner this year. Heck, even I have fantasized about what if it's the Chargers or the Broncos? 9 wins can get us in or out. We need to get more than 8 wins. My mainline prediction has been 10-7. Those are the numbers that keep coming up for me. 10-7. That probably would put us as the 6th or 7th seed. So it just depends on how the rest of the AFC goes. Like, I am all but 100% positive that the Bills are going to win the AFC East again. The Bills have made utter fools out of every pundit who's predicted that another team would win the division in the past few years. First people were saying the Dolphins would win the division, and they were this close to it. The Dolphins pissed away the division in epic fashion in 2023. And then people were saying the Jets will win the division, but they didn't realize that Aaron Rodgers was cooked and that Woody Johnson is one of the most hilariously incompetent owners. Well, the Rodgers saga now makes its way to Pittsburgh. And here's the thing. Last year, the Dolphins were one of the only teams to make Aaron Rodgers look like his elite form again. It took overtime to beat the Jets. The Jets in the first matchup last year. And then, of course, it is very popular to point and laugh at the Dolphins for just completely failing to beat the Jets in week 18 last year. But people forget that the Dolphins knew the Chiefs had to beat the Broncos in order for the Dolphins to make the playoffs. And that game was happening in real time alongside the Dolphins and Jets game. And it is very obvious that at some point the Dolphins knew that they were not going to make the playoffs. And so there really wasn't any point in winning against the Jets. Of course, this is the game where Tyreek Hill infamously removed himself from the game and then made the comments afterwards hinting at wanting to be traded, wanting to leave. In fact, there is one bit of news that I thought is probably a step in the right direction. The Dolphins announced their captains for the 2025 season on Monday, but there was one glaring omission. For the first time since joining the team in 2022, Wide receiver Tyreek Hill was not voted to be a captain by his teammates. So Tua, Alec Ingold, and Zach Sealer retained their roles as captains, while the first time selections for captain were Aaron Brewer and Jordan Brooks and Bradley Chubb. Colin says, I think Hill will be traded. I don't know when, but it's bound to happen. I would say that Tyreek Hill would only be getting traded. Tyreek Hill will only be getting traded in the events that the Dolphins completely implodes this season. Now, that is a very possible scenario, but otherwise, I think the Dolphins will keep Tyreek Hill for as long as he is out there playing and proving that he is going to make up for his actions at the end of last season. And, maybe Tyreek Hill won't get involved in another domestic dispute for the 100th time. It would be nice not to have any off-field distractions. Acharo says Xavier Howard was named as the starting corner for Sunday. Yeah, for the Colts. Kenneth says, wouldn't take a stretch for that to happen. One hit to Tua and the Dolphins season ends. Well, all of these predictions I made for the Dolphins are essentially based on the assumption that Tua stays healthy and that everyone else stays healthy. I know there will be injuries, but could Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb and Tua be spared this year, please? And no, I don't mean have other players besides them get injured. I need Achane to be healthy for my fantasy team, damn it. I know Achane is coming off the calf strain or whatever it is. But so, oh, hey, no, I knocked down the Ethernet cord again. There we go. Um, Kenneth says I missed the predictions. Dolphins ceiling playoffs. Um, I predicted a ceiling of 11-6. There are definitely games where the Dolphins have no business winning, like the games against the Bills, the Ravens. The Commanders game is probably a stretch to say we would win that. That Steelers game at Pittsburgh feels an awful lot like a loss. And I'm sure the Dolphins will lose to either the Bengals or Chargers or to a trap game team like the Panthers or Falcons. Davis Mills got a 1-year contract extension worth up to $7 million with the Texans. General Mills getting paid. Mr. Krabs says, I think the Dolphins will win a game we have no business winning. I'll tell you right now, I would be positively shocked if the Dolphins win either that Thursday night game against the Bills or the Thursday night game against the Ravens, just because of how brutal Thursday night games are. Joe Kerr says the Dolphins haven't won a game. The Dolphins haven't won a game they were unexpected to in a while under McDaniel. Yeah, the closest thing to a unexpected win we've had. There was the game that we beat the Bills at home because the Bills were roasting in the heat, and then they clocked the ball, and leading to that hilarious meltdown by their offensive coordinator in the booth. And then there was, of course, the Dolphins winning against the Cowboys thanks to Jason Sanders' most clutch performance ever with all the field goals he kicked. But unfortunately, as the more time that passes, the less impressive that win against the Cowboys becomes. There also was the Sunday night's game where we beat the Steelers. Kenneth says if the Steelers are hot, they will lose to the Dolphins. If they're struggling, they will beat the Dolphins. Steelers are only a bit better than the Dolphins, and they love 9-8 records. Well, it's funny because the Steelers are essentially like a mirror image of the Dolphins. The Steelers, I think their defense might be better, but their offense and quarterback might have more weaknesses than the Dolphins. Like Aaron Rodgers, yes, I know it's Aaron Rodgers, but the dude is 40 and is only one full season or a couple full seasons removed from a devastating well, it was he tore his ACL, correct? If there's any quarterback that could be more prone to an injury than Tua, I would place my bets on the 40-year-old with no mobility left. Mr. Krabs says, I remember when we beat the Ravens a few years ago, we had no business winning. Yeah, we were losing by 21 points at the start of the fourth quarter, and Tua, Tyreek Hill, and Jalen Waddle absolutely balled out, and the Ravens could only score that field goal, and then the Dolphins completed the comeback. Kenneth says, I'd bet on RG3 if he was still around. Joe Kerr says, that was McDaniel's first year. Hot take, but I think McDaniel's best year was actually his first, even though we won 2 more games the following year. Well, yeah, in McDaniel's first year, the Dolphins came this close to beating the Bills in the wild card round with Skylar Thompson as starting quarterback. Because that was. Am I getting seasons confused though? Because that was the last. Wasn't that, now that I'm thinking of it, wasn't that the last Brian Flores coached season? Wasn't that his defense that was wrecking Buffalo in the wild card round? No, I was correct. That was the first season. That was the closest. That was the closest the Dolphins have come this entire time to winning a playoff game in the last 25 years. Was the 2022 season. Yeah, going to Pittsburgh and New England late in the season is going to be tough because it's going to be cold. Yeah, I agree with you, Mr. Krabs. I want to secure a playoff spot before week 18. I do not want a win-in scenario where we have to play at New England. No, thank you. So interesting quirk with the the captaincies for the Dolphins. Apparently, under McDaniel, the Dolphins have never had as few as 16 captains. They had 7 in each of his first 2 seasons and 8 last year. But McDaniel explained that by saying the disparity between the player finishing 6th in the voting and the rest of the pack was so large, he drew the cut line at 6. So it's possible that Tyreek Hill might have been on the other side of that cut line. McKen's production says, How long have you been a Dolphins fan? Well, I'm a natural Dolphins fan since my dad was born and raised in Miami, and so he grew up a Dolphins fan. And I was also born in Florida, and I've been watching Dolphins games since at least 2007. Apparently, my very first experience with NFL football was the Mud Bowl against the Steelers in 2007. If you remember, that was the season the Dolphins went 1-15, and the Mud Bowl is one of the most hilariously bad games in the past 25 years. But I also got to see the 2008 season where we went 11-5 and made the playoffs. Mr. Krabs says the Bill Belichick era in North Carolina is not looking good. Kenneth says Pittsburgh, Miami, and the LA Chargers are always teams with scenarios going into the final week. Apparently Jackson Dart has been listed as the number 2 quarterback behind Russell Wilson on the New York Giants first depth chart. Miami record prediction. So I predict a floor of 6-11 and a ceiling of 11-6. That is assuming there are no injuries and no major trades. Have I played Division 1? Are you asking if I've ever played? Is that a division of professional football or collegiate football? Because I have never played football at any level beyond, say, elementary school. Mhm. Oh yeah, and in case you in case you hadn't heard of yesterday, Achan, who had been dealing with a calf injury, is returning to practice today, or he was returning to practice yesterday. Is on track to play Sunday versus the Colts. I keep knocking down this stupid Ethernet cord. My apologies. There we go. Who is the guy in the Who is the guy in the old videos of this channel? You mean the you mean the one with the beard and the bald head? That's my dad. Um, my dad who goes by the nickname Jaws. He he created this channel, and I have been essentially tasked with helping to helping to ramp things up for the football season, the upcoming football season. Mr. Krabs says, "What team do I think will surprisingly miss the playoffs?" Hmm. Surprisingly miss the playoffs. Well, if you want me to predict a team from last year, oh, for heaven's sake, really? My I lost connection to the camera. Give me a second. There we go. Pacharo says Steelers. Said, "Are you kidding me? What is wrong with this camera?" Well, the thing is, I don't think the Steelers missing the playoffs would be much of a surprise. I mean, they are banking on the 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers. Of course, with the tendency to go 9-8, it would take a whole lot of other teams doing a few other teams doing better than the Steelers. I'd say Steelers might miss the playoffs. I have the nagging feeling that one of the current top teams in the AFC is going to end up broken by all the failure they've had. Take your pick. Ravens or Bills? On paper, they are just as good. They are just as good as they have been in previous years, but they keep failing. Mr. Krabs says Patrick Mahomes has no O-line. Don't be surprised if the Chiefs miss the playoffs. Please, God, yes, let the Chiefs miss the playoffs. Please. Anyone but the Chiefs. If the Chiefs miss the playoffs, that's so much less coverage of Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. And it would also mean what's the name of him? Tony Romo would no longer be able to constantly glaze Mahomes. McKen's Productions asks, can we beat Buffalo this year? We can. Whether we will is something else entirely. I personally do not believe the Dolphins are going to beat Buffalo in either game. Josh Allen has had plenty of experience against us dealing with the intricacies of our defense. And, Sean McDermott knows what to expect mostly from the Dolphins. Mr. Krabs says the Vikings will also be another shocker to miss the playoffs. Well, we literally know nothing about how J.J. McCarthy is going to do at this level. Will I do live streams of other games besides the Dolphins? Yeah. As a matter of fact, Jaws and I will be live streaming the Thursday night's game this week. The season opener. The season opener between the Eagles and the Cowboys, because we have to see just how broken the Cowboys become. And also, I drafted Jalen Hurts and Devonta Smith in my fantasy, and Brandon Aubrey as my kicker. McKen's Production says, Don't be shocked if the Vikings win their division. Well, a lot of people are having questions about if Detroit can successfully move on from losing both Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Lions do, because, be honest, it's the Lions' division to lose. And so my dad and I are planning on streaming the Eagles-Cowboys game, the Dolphins game, and the Sunday night's game between the Bills and Ravens. That's going to be must-watch television. That's AFC divisional rematch. Joe Kerr says the NFC North is stacked. Oh, there's no doubt about that. You can make a legitimate case for every single team in the NFC North to make the playoffs, even the Bears, because Ben Johnson might be exactly the sort of coach that Caleb Williams and the rest of the Bears desperately need. In fact, I have drafted several Bears players for my fantasy draft for my fantasy team, just in case the Bears do break out. McKenz asked, "What exactly the problem in Miami? What's exactly the problem in Miami's roster this year?" Pacharo says maybe corners and O line. Yeah, corners and O line. Well, the starting O line is not the issue. It's the O line depth. There's hardly any of it. And corners were essentially Greer and McDaniel seem to be essentially banking on guys like Storm Duck and Jack Jones actually being competent at their jobs. And Pacharo asked, "Kyle, what would you rather see in 2026? Panthers win another Stanley Cup or the Dolphins win the Super Bowl?" Oh man, you have to make me choose. Well, I mean, the Panthers are going for a three-peat. I think I think my dad would throw me out a window if I wished for a Dolphins Super Bowl win instead of the Panthers theme. Joe Schad yesterday quoted Aaron Brewer saying it's realistic for the Dolphins to be the best offensive line in the league. Quote, "Why not us?" Well, yeah, you got to trust your quarterback. Pacharo says, "Do I see Rasul Douglas, Jack Jones, and Jason Marshall to be the three starting cores?" Well, Jason Marshall Jr. has apparently won that starting nickel job, the starting nickel. But I think Storm Duck has been number one corner for so long that Storm Duck will stay in the lineup, and that it'll be Rasul Douglas or Jack Jones in the second corner spot. Whose O line is worse, Chiefs or Finns? Good question. Oh yeah, apparently the Dolphins are the Dolphins are in a behind the scenes documentary series this year titled Under the Sun, and the first episode is scheduled to premiere on YouTube tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So I will definitely watch it. I will definitely watch it because it means I'll have something to talk about when I have to get with my dad, because tomorrow him and I are actually going to go see Jaws on the big screen for the 50th anniversary. So I don't know if I'm going to be doing a football stream tomorrow or not, because it might interfere with when we're supposed to go see the movie. But I'm sure my dad will keep you guys posted on what's going on. At any rate, Thursday night is when you'll see both Dad and I downstairs streaming the Eagles and Cowboys game. Ocharo says, Kyle, you're going to watch your dad eat people in the water. Joke's on you. The shark's name is not Jaws. It's Bruce. Would you look at that? Barry Jackson posted a couple of hours ago So the Dolphins' initial depth chart, which listed a 4-3 defense, the 4-3 defense depth chart has Chop Robinson and not Kenneth Grant listed as starter on defensive line, and that Jack Jones and Storm Duck are the first team corners. And someone responded that they are listing a 4-3 defense. If it was a 3-4 defense, we would see Kenneth Grant over Chop Robinson. Ashton Davis won a starting safety job. No rookie starters on defense, only one on offense, being Jonah Zavaiena. Jalen Wright is apparently still listed as running back 2, even though he's injured. Joe Kerr says, why would they put out Grant over Chop? Grant is a rookie. Well, because Kenneth Grant was drafted with the intent of having him start this season, I'm sure. Our defensive line was such, we needed a Christian Wilkins replacement badly. And Kenneth Grant did perform well enough in training camp and preseason to earn a starting job, from what I've heard. All right. I think that is going to do it for today's stream. My dad will keep you posted on whether there's going to be a football stream tomorrow or not. At any rate, we will see you on Thursday around game time for the Cowboys and Eagles game. And yeah, thank you very much for joining me, and please enjoy the rest of your afternoon. And we are so close to football. So close. So I'm really looking forward to it, and I hope you guys are too. They still have Waller as first tight end, even though he hasn't played. Well, yeah, I guess the idea is he will be first tight end. Because who else is going to be starting tight end? Starting tight end, right? All right. See you next time.